It's Thursday, October 10th. I'm Matt Harmon. Welcome to the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast, and it is a hell of a day to talk ball. And joining me to do just that is Nate Tice. Nate, what's going on, buddy?
Not too much. It is a hell of a day. It is not hell weather here in Vegas anymore. We have finally dipped below 90. We got a nice temperate low 80s, high 70s here in Las Vegas. So it is a hell of a day because I actually get to go outside without sweating. So I really enjoy that. I as a fellow big man, I'm sure you can relate to that. That is a wonderful feeling.
Yes, I can go outside and not feel that just down the back. You know, that's like
the layer.
Wow, great. Yeah, terrific.
The layer of perspiration.
Yeah, we've got a slight fall nip in the air here in Virginia, just a slight. I mean, we're not bundled up at all, but we've at least got the joggers on. The ankles are popping out, and it's a beautiful time to be alive. So it's also a beautiful time in the NFL, Nate, because we are 6 weeks in here. We've got 6 weeks worth of data on most of these teams, and on your show, Football 301, yesterday, we talked top 10 teams. We talked the best teams in the league, and like, yeah, these teams are good, but like, how good are they, and who's better, the Vikings or the Texans or the Ravens or the Lions, all these teams. I was like, okay, well, that's great. We did the top 10 teams. Let's get into the mess. Let's get into the muck and the mire here on the Fantasy Film Room. So for this show, we're going to talk about some struggling offenses, and we're specifically going to focus on struggling offenses that people actually care about. Okay. I don't think we need to come on here and talk about, oh, the Titans are struggling. Nate, what do we do about the Titans offense? Like, why are the Titans offense struggling? I also wanted to make it teams that are a little bit complicated, not easy answers. So we have 4 teams to talk about here today. We're going to talk Cardinals. We're going to talk Jaguars. We're going to talk Chargers and Dolphins. Other things might come up. We might not have our typical segments in the second half of the show. This might just be a straight shoot from the hip. So we're gonna get down here in the muck and the mire and talk about some offenses that aren't maybe hitting the potential that we thought they were.
Come enjoy some schlock with us. I told Matt when he had this idea, I was like, oh no, I'm good with that. This is where I have more fun sometimes, is talking about the bad. As someone that watched the Urban Meyer Jags every single week and watched their all 22 every single week. Yeah, this is what we're talking about. This is what I love, man. I love watching the bad defenses, the bad offenses, the bad players, and just see, maybe there's a kernel of fun there. Maybe there is something to work with here. Maybe it's just, I like bad movies sometimes too. So maybe this is related to that.
Again, it's something that, like I said, we're going to hopefully try to maybe figure out a solution, or can this get better for these teams? Because, I mean, yeah, we don't need to come on here and say, how can the Browns get better? They're not gonna. We don't need to have that conversation. We would have maybe talked Cowboys, but they're on the bye this week. So, and you know, I think for producer Colin's sanity, it was best that we avoided the Dallas Cowboys. So let's get into it here. Again, the topic at hand, we're assessing what to do with these should have been good struggling offenses. Basically, we want more fantasy juice from these squads and how to get it. And I think that brings us perfectly to our first team, which is the Arizona Cardinals. They were a very popular submission in the People's Panic Meter, Nate, earlier this week. You know, Kyler Murray, people are freaked out about Kyler Murray's performance. Obviously, Marvin Harrison Jr. Can't complain. The guy got knocked out of the game very, very early. But at the same time, he's been a little bit of an up and down performer. The run game maybe has been a little hit or miss, but it was funny, Nate, and obviously you are Mr. Cardinals. You know, when people sent in a bunch of People's Panic Meter submissions saying, I heard a lot of hype from this podcast about the Cardinals, and I'm not that satisfied with the fantasy results. So I know where a lot of that hype was coming from. Although I was on the neighborhood with you. I was maybe not. We weren't in the same house, but we were at least down the street from each other. At the same time, so I start to prep for this show because I knew I wanted to talk about the Cardinals, and a lot of their metrics are actually pretty good. They're 13th in EPA per play. They're 15th in offensive DVOA, and we're basically going to go in descending order here, best to worst of the bad. Like, so Cardinals, let's start with them. 6 weeks into the season, how are you feeling about the Arizona Cardinals?
It looks like a young team. And meaning that a lot of the players that they rely on outside the quarterback and the main running back, which is also the guys that you probably bought up a lot of fantasy stock in, is that they make a lot of mistakes that keep them from getting over the top at times. Because I looked at the same metrics that you just did, that you just cited. I looked at my early down success rate, explosive play rate, and that's exactly what their EPA numbers are. They're 13th. They're just behind the Vikings. We've heard a lot about the Vikings, especially from me and you. They're ahead of the Saints, the Eagles, the Colts, the Packers. They're ahead of the Commanders on early down sex rate. So it's not like, I mean, we've heard plenty of that about the Commanders offense. Again, those are turning into more fantasy points and real football points as well.
Right.
I expected them at first. My first theory was, well, that means third and fourth down. They must be worse. Nope. They're 11th. They're 11th in that category. They're in the top half of the league again. I will say, so this is a team that needs a bye week. This is a team, because they're so young. We've talked about this a few times, but young teams especially, and teams that I like the coaching staff and maybe respect, like a guy like Drew Petzing, I think they usually take a leap after the buys because they really self-scout, figure out what is and what's not working for them. But I think when I'm watching this, they're focusing on getting Marvin Harrison Jr. targets. Again, he got knocked out last week, but they're using him as a true X. And we've talked about this. It's a lot of ISO ball. Kyler's feeding him a ton. Sometimes that's not really turning into success, but I think they're trying to pay for long-term dividends in that. But also, Harrison Jr., I would say, has been a little disappointing at the catch point, working through contact. And it's not just the ISO ball stop routes. Last week, the play he got hurt on, he was dropping another one. Like, those are kind of just been a thing for this offense. And when that guy's getting a majority of the targets on that, can lead to some up and downs with the offense where it just doesn't feel consistent. I would say my first kind of like scheme fix, more 2x2, meaning when we say Marvin Harrison Jr. is ISO, that usually means it's a 3x1 formation. 3 guys to one side and he's to the left. Petzing likes this stuff. His offensive dogma uses a lot of trips. And I think they got to make it more of a 2-man game with him and Trey McBride. Those two need to work together, work on the same side. That would also expand Marvin Harrison Jr.'s route tree. But 84% of his snaps so far have been from on the ball. Next gen stats now is on ball, off ball stats, which is nice. That's 12th among qualifying receivers.
Stepping on my turf on that one, but that's fine.
I figure I was actually a little curious if you had something here, so I was I'm gonna get him out. And I'm not saying like, oh, slot equals automatically good, but just a little to make his life easier, just a little to get him going, where it's not just all these difficult routes. Which again, I think they're working towards long-term dividends, but right now it's just kind of. That's where there's some up and downness. I still trust the run game. I still trust that that's a strength of this team. There's on both sides of the ball, they're just like a player away, it feels like. But I really just think this offense is going to ascend in the second half of the year. But the thing is, they play the Chargers, Bears, and Jets 3 of the next 4 weeks, and then they have their bye week. They get the Seahawks after the bye, and then I believe they have the Vikings after that. But they have more difficult teams. So I would say I still like a lot, but there are inconsistencies. And I think some of that is because of the players that they have to prioritize are first-year guys, second-year guys, and third-year guys at the skill position groups.
Can you tell me that Marvin Harrison Jr., read that stat out, the on the ball, off the ball one more time?
So 84% of his snaps have been from on the ball, which is 12th among qualifying receivers.
Yeah, so just guys I charted last year for reception perception, because that's what I mean, stepping on my turf. I've been like the only guy providing on the ball stats forever.
Next gen stats went, hey,
yeah,
that's a fun stat we could track.
That's important.
They just added it this week. Shout out to my guy Keegan Abdu from Next Gen Stats.
Shout out to Keegan. Yeah, Keegan's
the best.
Yeah, also used to work with him and the Next Gen Stats
back
in my day at the NFL. But okay, so yes. I said whenever I say that stuff about like, oh man, I always take that as like a compliment that people on the outside are like, oh, this is, if I'm thinking about something that other smart people are thinking about, like, that's good. That's all I care about. That's totally. All I care about. No, the people are so protective about like, I was first on this. Like, give me a break. That stuff's stupid. But okay, so among the receivers I tracked last year, the only guys that were 84% or above, like on snaps on the ball, Nico Collins, Rashad Bateman, Devontae Adams, Jamison Williams, Brandon Ayuk, like all true real deal X receivers. And so that is definitely the thing with Harrison, is that he has been used in ways that I think are naturally going to lead to volatility unless you are an elite player. And while Ayuk last year, elite player, Devontae Adams, elite player, Nico Collins, buddy boy, pretty much an elite player at the wide receiver position. All those other dudes like Williams, Bateman, those are volatile guys. Mike Evans was just behind those guys at 83%. So unless you are truly like I said, a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL, it's going to naturally lead to some volatility in your production. Now, obviously, Harrison was an elite prospect, but he's still a rookie wide receiver there. Yes. And just what they're doing is it's funny because I think you're so right to point this out that, and we do this a lot, with teams, like we get so frustrated. We want to see the results immediately, but these guys are not working to score fantasy points in the first 6 weeks of the season. They're trying to build something here, right? This is it's a young team. It's only a second year with this coaching staff. It's really only the first year that they're going to all be like that Kyler Murray is going to be with these guys. So they're definitely trying to build something here. Like this might be rocky to start and be really good by the end of the season. Maybe we don't know that, but I think that's the hope in the building. You're also right to bring up the schedule here too, which this does feel like a classic post-bye team. I love that she said that. Chargers in week 7, Dolphins in week 8, Bears in week 9, then Jets in week 10, bye in week 11. After the bye, they have that Vikings game in week 13, but other than that, Seahawks, Patriots, Panthers, Rams heading into week 17. Like that's all. Some defense. Like this could be where we see that version of the Cardinals late in the year.
Yeah, great point. And that, I look at raw stats and DVOA does a good job of kind of adjusting for the defense. I mean, that's their whole shtick. So hopefully it is a good job, but it takes some time for that to catch up too, because as the season goes along, then, they weigh it differently. And that's where I'm kind of going like, hey, they're playing not the worst defenses in the world. They're actually playing some tough defenses. And the one defense they went that should have been a layup, the Commanders, Trey McBride's out. Right. And that you really felt him being out in that game because you realize, oh, wow, they do a lot with him and he is a good player. So I that's what sometimes you need those layup games to like really build and really go, okay, now we got the 30 points there. Boom, 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 boom. And they've had some frustrating moments. Like even they've gone for it on 4th down and Kyler holds the ball 1 second. The right tackle loses right away and they take a sack, like where they would have been in scoring range, where they just can't get over the top right there. And so I think this is a team that does ascend in the second half of the year. And I just really do think that there are answerable or fixable things with this offense. The structure is not bad. I actually think it's very good, very sound. And Kyler's had some really good moments. There are times where he turns into chaos.
I was going to ask you, like, how do you think Kyler has played this year? Because I think that's pretty, like, as a passer, the results have been a little hit or miss so far this year.
I would say good, but at times inconsistent. He's very up and down week to week. It's like, right away whether you're going to get a good Kyler game or like an iffy Kyler game, like in the first kind of couple drives. That's how I feel. It's like the 49ers game, brilliant. Like I thought that was one of his better games. Even Tom Brady, who I'm just hearing in between the lines of how Tom Brady was talking about Kyler. I know he can't be negative about players anymore. That he was kind of like, as the game went along,
can't say anything anymore, if we're being honest.
Apparently, but you could tell like Kyler was earning his respect as the game went along, because I thought that was a very good quarterback game from Kyler, even though he had the 60-yard designed run touchdown.
Yeah,
that's where again it's a hard offense. It's a very traditional NFL offense. And there's not a lot of easy buttons right now. Mm-hmm. And I do think is on purpose. Like they're like, no, we got talent. We're going to make you guys grow through this. Again, I respect it, even if the results just aren't there. It's just, and that's, again, we're on a fantasy show and I get that, but I do think this is a team that will ascend in the second half because they do a lot of good things.
Yeah, let's kind of dive into the passing game a little bit more here. And just, I love some of your suggestions there about like 2x1 or 2x2 type of sets here, because yeah, it is when you watch Marvin Harrison, he is on the ball. He's the ISO receiver, usually on the left side of the field, completely on the boundary. And, that's a very traditional old school X receiver role. And I've been saying, and, some people hate this type of stuff, but to me, that is the hardest job you can ask a wide receiver to do. Like I said, it's very old school. Even guys like, even the best receivers in the league, and this doesn't take away from what they're doing, but like Justin Jefferson doesn't get used that way,
Nope.
Like even AJ Brown, who is, I think carved from stone to be like an X receiver, and it's actually absurd when you look at I know it's only been 2 games for him this year, but the amount of like his percentage of targets against man coverage versus his percentage of targets against zone coverage. A lot of that is just because like, yeah, man, he could line up as the boundary receiver and just go to work, but they do some things to move him around. So it's like, what he is doing it's very advanced stuff, and he's I don't have any questions really with him as a route runner, as a separator, any of that stuff. To me, I think that stuff is overblown. But yeah, you're right to point out the catch point volatility. I will give a shout out to. Yeah, it's been disappointing. And I will give a shout out to Matt Waldman, who was the first person who noted this to me when we were talking about Harrison privately. He's like, really just watch in detail some of his catch point stuff at Ohio State. And you could see some concerns with it. Like, it definitely showed up in some of my charting data too, about like he was fine at the catch point. Not bad, not bad at all, but certainly not elite. Like, he was fine at it. And I think that's one area where he will have to continue to grow. It's also definitely a Kyler thing too. We're working on chemistry and ball placement and things like that. I think that stuff will come in time. And again, this is like, it is a fantasy show. We're talking about like the week to week ride and the results and things like that. But this is a big reason of why that volatility has been there. Doesn't mean it's going to be like that forever, but it's something that, especially against some of these tougher defenses, they're going to have to work through that. They did this a little bit with Michael Wilson to end his rookie season too. When Marquise Brown went down, they say, hey buddy, I know you've been doing a lot of this power slot off the ball stuff.
Yeah.
We're going to toss you at X, and like Kyler is just going to throw you go balls. And one week, I believe he went like 0 for 3 on contested situations against the Bears, I think in week 17 last year. And then in week 18, he's dunking on the damn Seahawks. And like, that's kind of what I think they're hoping to get from Harrison at some point.
And the designs are so good. I'm glad he brought Michael Wilson. Was the touchdown, the first one he had against the Packers. It was a great design in the red zone. And that's why I like this offense, is because like, they can do this. Like, their red zone stuff's really good. It's just, again, like you said, volatility is the perfect word right now. And even you mentioned all those receivers that played on ball more than at a higher rate than MHA has done this year. And it was Ayuk, Devontae Adams, Nico Collins. What's kind of a common theme with some of those guys is that they're a little slow starters as rookies.
Yeah.
And even and again, some of that's quarterback play for Nico Collins' case, but then there are different coaching staffs, yada, yada. But like Devontae Adams took forever because, again, they were trying to work on the hard stuff with him and make him a true X. And same with Ayuk. Ayuk was more like details, blocking and all that, but they're like, hey, do it. Yeah. Like, that's what they wanted him to do. Again, it's just that it's hard. It's like in basketball, it's ISO ball. It's a guy winning one-on-one, truly winning, not motion offense and not guys moving and setting a screen. It's like, you got to beat this guy. You got to beat Joe Johnson here and ISO Joe him. But that's hard to do. And so this is just the receiver version of it. Again, I do think they ascend. I do think he comes back. Maybe sometimes a little 1 week injury can help rookies a little bit, where they, all right, I take a deep breath. I could just focus here and watch him move some detail stuff. Oh, okay, that's what you meant. The NFL's a slog. It never lets up. It just never lets up. So again, post bye week Cardinals, I'm still optimistic about. Again, they're in the top half of the league and all these underlying metrics. Right. So but it does. I agree with people though. I have been at times disappointed in this offense, but then I watch them. I'm always like, no, that was a good design. Yeah. Oh, okay. The right tackle lost there. Okay. That makes sense. He just dropped it there. Okay. They're trying that. So again, those underlying things I think will pay dividends as the things go along, as the weeks go along.
That's sort of what I thought too. Like, I expected, based on the way some people talked about it, like to go back and watch the film and be like, I don't really love the way Drew Petzing's doing things. And I don't really feel that way. I think they run a pretty sound NFL offense that, is it like all jacked up with some of the creative bells and whistles that we like? Maybe not, but maybe not. But at the same time, I think the concepts are sound. I think most of the players are executing pretty well. Yeah, it's like, okay, maybe 10 guys did their job, the 11th guy didn't. Some of the stuff like that. And definitely some of those have been the quarterback and the number one wide receiver, and that's going to lead to some volatility. Yep. But, I it's not totally fair to compare these two players, but just like comparing, the way like Malik Neighbors was used in the first 4 weeks of the season versus the way Marvin Harrison has been used, it's just, I think what one team is like, and there's no right or wrong way to do this. One's going to definitely pay immediate dividends in fantasy and the other isn't. But I think one team, and the Giants, is like, we are just going to get this guy the ball because he's our best player in any way possible. And we are going to spam the out of these layup routes. We're going to give him the ball. And they're different players too. You wouldn't use Marvin Harrison like you'd use Malik Neighbors and things like that. Well, okay, that in the first 4 weeks of the season, the Giants were 22nd in EPA per play on offense. Like they were not a good offense doing that stuff. And I actually kind of think, again, to take a beat with Neighbors out. I think they've actually discovered like, oh yeah, you know what? Like Tyron Tracy can play, and Darius Slayton's a useful wide receiver. And all roads always lead back to Darius Slayton for the damn Giants there. So it's like, I think that
every time he makes a catch, I'm like, he's still there.
Oh yeah. They get contract disputes. They try to trade him. They try to replace him with Jalen Hyatt. No, he is like the wide receiver cockroach. He will always be there in New York. He's been there since 2019 at this point. And you know, Wan'Dale Robinson.
Wide receiver cockroach is brilliant. He's receiver share. Yeah, that's
100%. No, he never goes. He'll be there till he's catching passes until he's 70 as a New York Giant. Yeah, so I think that overall, again, what Harrison they're trying to do with him is grow and develop there, and hopefully that comes in time, because again, the first 4 weeks. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, go.
Oh no, I was gonna say, and too, like run game wise, they're bringing Trey Benson along very slowly, and that's because it's just, this is like a 1998 coaching staff with their philosophy. I think like they're just like, hey, he's a rookie running back, can't handle protections, well, can't see the field, and that's like, and I go back and forth with that. I get it being, hey, we have James Conner. We have the TCU guy, Delmacaro.
Amari DiMercato, yeah.
DiMercato, who is a nice role player, does protection, is a good receiving back. So they're like, oh, we'll trust him. Again, they're trying to do long-term growth here with guys. But again, it's not a lot of fun when you have these young players who are exciting. But I again, this is the second half kind of thing, I think, for them. And Benson had two runs stuck out to me against the Packers. One where I was like, yeah, you could tell he's tiptoeing a little bit, and then he hits it, and then he has a nice bounce run where you can see his gifts and see the explosive plays. So again, I want to see if they maybe trickle in more of that as he learns the playbook and learns the stuff, because again, it's a difficult offense. It really looks like that.
Connor is also dealing with an ankle injury right now, which got Benson back on the field because in week 5 against the Niners, he didn't even play at all. So he is definitely somebody that's still kind of on that like waiver wire speed dial. If anything happens to Connor, he should be stashed, I think, like that. But yeah, I think that you're right. This isn't a criticism, but it's a very old school operation there in Arizona right now, as much as there's all these exciting players. Just, I think overall, after having this conversation with you and thinking about this myself, I just kind of feel like the Cardinals were the hipster movie of the offseason, like cool guys like Nate Tice, on the cutting edge of what's hip in the NFL, talking up the Cardinals. And by the way, I think like justifiably, again, they're a top 15 offense by a variety of metrics. And when you look at the results for the players, Kyler is QB9. That's generally the range where he was drafted in fantasy. Mm-hmm. James Conner is RB14. That is generally the range. Actually, it's ahead of where he was drafted in fantasy.
It is, right? I was going to say he was like, what, 18 or so? Like, yeah.
Yeah, 18, 20-ish. Trey McBride is tight end 6. That's lower than where he was drafted, but he also missed a game. Marvin Harrison Jr. has now, had a obviously missed last week's game. He had the concussion. Then he had the mysterious week 1. So he's wide receiver 26. He's definitely been the most disappointing one based on where he was drafted very, very high. Michael Wilson's wide receiver 48. That is ahead of where he was drafted for sure. So weirdly, I just think like it's one of those things where, yeah, this was a good hipster band that got a little mainstream. And now I think people are like, this isn't what I was expecting or something like that. But in time, maybe we can come back around here.
This is, and I'm glad you brought it up because it was so funny. I had to like stop my own hype with them because even like their win total went from 5.5
to 7.5, right? Yeah.
And it went to 7.5 by the end of August. And so that was one where I went from, over 5.5, definitely. And then once it was 7.5, we did the over under win show. And I was like, no, under 7.5, because that's where I thought they were more of a 6-7 win team. But that's, the expectations got a little high. And this is kind of where I thought they would sit. I didn't even mention they were honorable mention for top 10 offenses because I was like, they might sneak in there, but I think they're more like a 12th offense. I look at the numbers and that's where they're at. I know. I'm with everybody though. It's an all 22 team. It's like you watch it on TV, you're like, ugh. And then you watch it on all 22. I'm like, oh wow, this is pretty good. I actually like what they're doing here. Oh, okay, just one guy. So keep the faith. I think is my short, too long didn't read about this.
Yes, I agree. We're on the same page. I don't know if we're going to feel that way about our next team here, the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Let me crack my knuckles. There we go.
put the arrow
I'm
in.
removing them from the ban list right now. Yeah. Here we go.
The Jaguars are 20th in offensive DVOA. They're 21st in EPA per play. There are multiple like disappointments on this team, right? Travis Etienne is running back 33 on the season. He was definitely drafted a little bit higher than a running back 33. Brian Thomas Jr., he's been great. He's wide receiver 11 in fantasy. That's obviously been a huge shout out to the Instagram comment warriors who bullied me for saying I'd rather have Brian Thomas and Christian Kirk this season. Shout out to all those people. By the way, Christian Kirk is wide receiver 43 on the season. Not been a good fantasy draft pick is Christian Kirk. You know, Evan Ingram, obviously he catches 10 passes in his return from injury last week, but still he's missed time and he's been, you know, obviously just not part of the picture here. And Trevor Lawrence, nobody really drafted Trevor Lawrence to be a fantasy starter, but even still he has been a disappointment this year. He's QB 20. So, don't feel great about Jaguars. Nate Tice, would you like to start pass game? Would you like to start run game? Would you like to start vibes? You can go anywhere.
Vibes. This is the dumbest team possible. I'll start. This is the most mistake-prone team. They've lead the NFL in drops since Doug Peterson got there. They're over the league average by 20. They have 74 drops since 2021. The league average is 54.
Wow.
Or I'm sorry, 2022. So yeah, the league average is 54. No team has lost more EPA to drops. I'm sure anyone that watched the London game was like, wow, there's a lot of drops there. That's every week. It's every week with this team. That's what happens when you, and as much as we want to get on the coaches, and I had a rant a few weeks ago, this all comes back to the root problem, which is the personnel. And this is a very hyper-specific personnel. One guy gets hurt. One guy can't go. Everything else kind of feels unraveled. And Christian Kirk is the perfect guy for that. They've spent big money. Trent Baalke did on a slot-only guy. And I like Christian Kirk in that role, but that again, that's hyper-specific. You have to use him in certain ways. And that's how the rest of the team feels. We've talked about Gabe Davis, the sacrificial X, has positives to his game, but he also needs to be in role-wise the 3 or 4 targets-wise. If he's 1 or 2 targets-wise, you're a losing team. Like that's just kind of how I feel, or it's not a passing game that should be maximized. Brian Thomas Jr. already mentioned he's going to be a star. He's good, right. But he's a rookie, and you see it sometimes. Like rookie plays hard, guys. We get spoiled sometimes by the guys that are elite right away or very good right away. Most guys, even talented as they are, it's a lot. And other guys, Evan Ingram as a free agent bargain when we have no other receivers, great, love it, fine. Extending him, highlighting him in the passing game, don't like that. They have a lot of auxiliary target guys and they're trying to feature them. And they have to be, and again, they have to be used in certain ways. So you become predictable. It's just a mess. You become just like, okay, this guy has to be here. So now we can't run this play, or this play because Evan Ingram can't block or Christian Kirk can't fit up on the safety or can't line up outside. So all this specificity, I should never use that word again because I can never say it, is that leads to this offense. And those are just the skill guys. Oh, shit. I didn't even talk about Travis Etienne, who is a boom bust running back, which is how this run game always feels. He's also just kind of a losing player. And I'll just kind of say it like that. The fumble in the red zone a few weeks ago, that's him. Like that, he just makes mistakes at the worst moments. He's terrible in pass protection. This is a guy in year 4, and he's still terrible in pass protection. So you can't use him on third down. So that also takes away some stuff you have to have. Now you have personnel tells. Oh, if Tank Bigsby's in there, they're going to do this, this, and this. And Tank Bigsby's fine. He's had some nice moments now. But again, he's more fine than like a guy.
Even when Etienne gets hurt last week in the London game, it's not just like, all right, now we're just giving the ball to Tank Bigsby. It's like, no, we got to play Dearness Johnson out there because we don't really trust Bigsby on passing down. Like Etienne ain't even really that good at passing down anyways.
And that's what this whole roster is. It's not a lot of needle movers. It's a lot of guys that are role players that are getting featured. And that's just been the issue with this team. God, they had so many picks and cap space. And that's why this GM, like, look at his non-hardball record. It's terrible. Like this is the exact same thing he did in San Francisco. And then getting in, we're talking skill guys. I know it's a fantasy show, but then going to the offensive line, like Mitch Morse is carrying on his reputation. He's never been great for protection stuff, even though he's a vet. And I think guys interview him, they're like, oh, he's smart. Once kind of stuff starts flying, he kind of loses it. And what's the point of signing a vet center if he's not going to make your quarterback's life easier? So now Trevor kind of goes, oh, well, he met the point wrong, so I got to go fix this. So he's already thinking before the snap. And you don't want that. You want you guys to play smooth and not have to stand and think all that much. Brandon Scherf's on his last legs. He was on his last legs last year. Anton Harrison, who looked like a future star as a rookie, has regressed. So this to me is O-line coaching. Urza Cleveland, who is the O-line coach's favorite, is an NPC. And then Cam Robinson's kind of just always been okay. But he's a Trent Baalke favorite because he went to Alabama. He went to a big school. So Baalke's like, he has to be good. Nick Saban coached him. So I feel like if anyone's listened to me the last year or two, it's like, it's a lot. I'm repeating a lot of my same points, but that's because they haven't changed.
Right. Yeah.
So like, it's going to be the same points. And like Trevor, watch the first half of that London game, has really good moments and good stretches. And then you see him pressing. You see him trying to force an overthrow. You see him bailing from the pocket early because he doesn't trust the offensive line. And they're working through some things. I will credit that they have moments where this offense actually looks efficient and they move the ball well. And then they just punch themselves in the nuts because they're addicted to it. And that's the Jaguars. That's why they've been on my ban list on Football 301, because it's just, I just really feel like it's more of the same. And that's why I'm like so mad at them. It's like, it's like what, Austin Powers, where the steamroll scene, where the guy's just yelling and going, no. That's the Jaguars. That's the Jaguars right there.
Oh, geez, where to go from there?
I know. Sorry, I told you before the show. I was like, hey, I think my Jags segment's going to go a little bit.
I should have threw a break before the Jags. No, but like, I mean, there's so many good points here, and it is hard to like. In one sense, it's just already over with the Doug Peterson stuff. Yeah. Our buddy Kevin Clark has the saying pre-fired by, for coaches and stuff like that. As soon as they're hired, they're pre-fired. Yeah. I didn't feel that way about Doug Peterson when he was hired.
No.
But I felt that way about Doug Peterson now for like months and months. And I keep coming back to that halftime interview that he gave NFL Network during the London game, and I'm like, dude, this guy, I've had that phase before. I don't want to be here. Yeah, and that is exactly what he's at right now. And it does feel like, Peterson, I don't know if he's a good offensive coach anymore, but he was at one point, and I think Trevor can be like, I don't think he can be an elite quarterback. I've kind of given up. I don't know if you have, but I've just kind of given up like that path for him.
I think he ends up Dak tier.
Yeah,
for me,
sure.
But
he's not there yet. But like he could end up. He's
on a
there.
Stafford arc.
Yeah, I remember you comparing him to like a more exciting or more athletic like Matt Ryan, and that feels like that kind of feels like what we could be an appropriate place for Trevor Lawrence to land. And that still feels like very prescient and things like that analysis, but but it's not going to happen. Like everybody just needs to get away from each other basically for any of that stuff to happen. But nuts and bolts, like the skill position players and kind of what to do rest of the season with these guys. Cause you're so right that one of these guys goes out, like it just, you're screwed because they can't play multiple positions. And Kirk, I mean, I do like Christian Kirk. I actually wasn't like vomiting all over the place when they signed him because of like they need useful players and he can be a useful player even if it's only in one role. The problem is like they have these two twin towers now at outside receiver and Gabe Davis, and then a much better version than in Brian Thomas over there. But even Kirk is like a vertical slot receiver. He's not like a layup slot receiver. So really you end up pumping like a bunch of like Mickey Mouse tight end targets to Evan Ingram. That's messy. Hey, for your PPR, like you're going to PPR scam the hell out of like Evan Ingram rest of the year. So he's probably like the best. If you're looking for like fantasy winner from all this dysfunction, it's like, yeah, Evan Ingram, 10 catches a game, lock it in. He's probably one of the only good productive tight ends out there. But Thomas is interesting just because like you mentioned, we put too much expectations on rookies. I think we especially do that once we see these guys produce. Like he thumped the Colts. Every perimeter receiver thumps the Colts. Like that doesn't mean that he's going to come out and like smash every single week or he's already a number one receiver. And he's a good receiver and he could eventually be like a star level player, but right now he's still a little bit of a volatile guy, and he's their best skill position player by far in my opinion. He's a rookie and they're in his 7th game. So I feel like I actually don't have a lot of hope for what's going to happen here. And I like, can it get worse before it gets better? I guess is the way to ask this.
I hope not. And I know it's become kind of a thing, like a bit where I'm like, oh, I'm just over this team, but I really am. Like, I just am, because I just don't, there's no reinforcements. There's no new staff member where I'm like, well, they can turn to him. Like, McCoy, the quarterback coach and stuff, but it's just like, all right, who are you turning to? And obviously Doug Peterson's Doug Peterson. He's going to blame Trevor if something wrong happens. He said that they need a culture change. This is year 3, by the way, of his regime. And after they already made personnel changes on their staff after this year, after they were forced to. So
I wonder who's in charge of the culture of the building.
I don't know. Any thoughts on that? Yeah, I know. Maybe that guy that's called head coach. And then I kind of know Balky's game, and he's Littlefinger, so he's gonna make sure that Doug is taking all the press conferences and making sure that he's out there, and then try and keep his job.
Isn't Peterson his 5th head coaching hire?
So, yeah.
Well, I mean, 5th head coach has been paired with, because it was Harbaugh, and then
Harbaugh,
Tom Sula, Chip Kelly. Yeah, you can't forget about Tom Sula, right? And then the two, and then Urban Meyer and friggin' Doug Peterson.
And then now, if he gets number 6, like, it's got to be a total mouthwash with this team. Like, there's rumors about the Belichick stuff, and it's like, but one of those where it's like, actually, for a team that needs discipline and a culture change and a personality change, I don't hate that. And maybe he, could slap some of Trevor's silliness out of him, and maybe that's not the worst, but that's not even fun for me. But I just totally see it coming. Because Shad Khan kind of loves that stuff, loves the name guys. He, for better, for worse, he lets the football guys be the football guys. He just keeps hiring Urban Meyer and Trent Baalke and all these guys that are, not winning people. So I know they won games in the past. I get all that in the NFL when they're on their own. But it's just a mess to me. And I have kind of felt that way. I thought I was excited about the defense. I know we're talking about the offense, but the defense has been disappointing.
That's another thing. You can't even turn. Oh, you want to get rid of the offensive staff? You can't turn it over to Ryan Nielsen as the interim head coach, because that's been a huge disappointment.
Tyson Campbell goes out, but it's like a good player, but it's like him going out really costs you all of this. Like, this is how you guys play. Devin Lloyd's a losing player. Again, all these guys, Trevon Walker's playing fine, playing well. But again, it's not dominant. Like, obviously, it's shown that Aiden Hutchinson, your defensive player of the year pick, hopefully comes back okay next year. That looks like a loss right there. You're getting a guy that's getting all these sacks, going for defensive player of the year with no help originally. And it's like Trevon Walker's still developing, still going on. It's like, all right, year 7, maybe we get that star player, but it might not be the GM that drafted him that's enjoying it. So they're a mess. They really are. They feel so Jaguars and it's a team. And I think why I'm so mad about them is that I stuck through with them on that Urban year. The first year, Doug Peterson had so much hope. Even with guys, I was like, okay, the personnel's not great, but they're getting there. I love that you brought up the Christian Kirk signing, because in that moment, it was a little too much. But like you said, they needed players. They had nobody, and I liked Kirk at Arizona. I really did. I liked how Cliff Kingsbury used him in the slot. Can't believe those words just came out of my mouth. But they are, hey, Cliff is doing okay with me, man. How that O-line's playing in Washington, I'm fine eating some crow because I'm enjoying some of the stuff they're doing. But it's just a mess, and they need guys that have different eyeballs there and different brains there, because just what they're doing is just going to be the same. And now you got people trying to keep their jobs, and that's never where you want to be. Yeah. They needed a win the last couple of weeks, and they just Jaguared it. That's just how they play. Just look at the red zone stats. It's the funniest thing. Like, how many turnovers they have in the red zone, how many drops they have in the red zone. It's just a bunch of losing players.
And that's why I feel like it's not gonna get better. No. Like I said, I think the only guys really that are gonna make a difference for you in fantasy right now is it's Evan Ingram. You're gonna scam your way there, and you're gonna get some good Brian Thomas games, but it is gonna be volatile. It is gonna be up and down. I still think he is a guy that, as a wide receiver 3, you're probably playing every single week, but let's remember that volatility is going to be present in the rest of his season. I think even once they who knows what the hell it's going to look like when they get out of the bye after their next London game, because if they lose the Patriots, I mean, my God, I do think it will be big time over for Doug Peterson, the boys.
Drake May might run for 70 yards on them.
Oh yeah, that 100%. Talk about prop bets. I'm going to be taking this weekend. But yeah, I mean,
I love the underrated Drake May athleticism. It's the best. It's the best thing going right now until people catch up with it.
Yeah,
this guy
over under for him was 25 rushing yards in his first.
It started at 13 and a half.
Oh, despicable.
It got juiced up to 23. It started at 13 and a half.
You
think someone's getting stereotyped a little bit? Yeah, but they go, where do they go? They got Patriots in London again, and then bye. And then, no bye. Then they go straight to Packers. Wow. And then they got Packers.
Oh, God. Yeah, their bye's not till week 12. Yeah, they have
I thought it was after this week, too.
They have Packers, Eagles, Vikings, Lions. And then they come out of the bye and they get the Texans. Like
Texans.
I mean, good luck. Yeah, so again,
oh my God,
be ready to accept some volatility. This should be the Bengals, the great fantasy carnival of the year, because the defense can't stop anything on the other side. They should be in all these like fun shootouts, but they're a poorly coached team. I think the Bengals are actually a pretty well coached team, and like they have a good culture and things like that. So yeah, I'm pretty pessimistic about what we get from the Jaguars.
You mean the Bengals play to their players' strengths? Yeah, that's
weird.
Usually, I don't know. Zach Taylor gets a lot of, which is ironic because Press Taylor's his brother in Jacksonville. So
that is true,
right? Zach Taylor gets a lot of flack, especially from Bengals fans, that they're like, "Why don't you do this?" It's like he's playing to what his players are good at. Yeah. That's why they do this. Like, that's why you don't. Joe Burrow doesn't want motion. He doesn't want the play action stuff. And guess what? He's really good at nickel and diming and then taking the occasional shot play. So that, I don't know. Sorry. I always just laugh at Bengals fans. They're like, why aren't you guys doing this? It's like, this is working, guys. I don't know why you guys are complaining.
All right, we'll talk about mouthwash. We need to mouthwash. Take a quick break.
That felt good.
It felt good. It did feel good for Nate to get a lot of that off. And
it's like popping a zit.
Yeah, I think we all have a little bit more reasonable expectations with the Jaguars going forward and any like hope for these offensive players. So let's take a quick break. We come back. We'll talk about the LA Chargers and the Miami Dolphins right after this. All right, we're back. Let's talk Los Angeles Chargers, who they're 3-2. They're second in the AFC West. Like, they might make the damn playoffs. I know you considered them, Nate, when we talked about the top 10 teams. You kind of considered them one of your honorable mention type teams right now. So yeah, I think the Jim Harbaugh stuff is going on well in Los Angeles. The offense, if you look at any metric, still stinks.
It kind of surprised me a little bit.
22nd in offensive DVOA, 23rd in EPA per play. If you look at Justin Herbert's like just passing numbers, he's thrown for 6 touchdowns, in 5 games. That's just not great. Yards per attempt is 6.5. It's another kind of low number for him. 10.2 yards per completion. They do not have a receiver over 220 yards on the year. So I think a lot of this is passing game stuff, but let's before we talk about the passing game, let's talk a little bit about the run game and kind of what you've seen so far out of J.K. Dobbins, who's definitely been one of the best picks you can make. Probably was like a waiver wire addition in most leagues.
Yeah, I'm kind of disappointed in myself for a lot of my fantasy leagues not getting him, because it was the math was mathing. And I love J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins in that draft class that he came out, I had him over Jonathan Taylor. He was my number 1 running back, and then it was Jonathan Taylor was number 2. DeAndre Swift was nowhere near there. But in that, like, Dobbins is a great back. It's great to see him healthy. And we know what a Harbaugh, Greg Roman offense is going to be. They're not hiding what they're going to be. There's a lot of tight ends. There's a lot of bulk out there. There's a lot of just beefy boys running the ball. It's coming. Like, it's coming along. And how they played against the Broncos, Patrick Surtain got hurt on the first play. Made a great play against Ladd McConkey too. Yeah. They felt in control in that game, especially in the run game. And the Broncos have been giving a lot of offenses issues. So I'm not even talking about the passing game. They're very sound. They're going to commit to it. So like Dobbins is the guy to get because of just the frequency of it and the efficiency that they're going at right now. You brought up all the underlying stats. That's what's so funny. I feel so much better about the Chargers than, say, the Jaguars. Like even who might be, in the same tier right now statistically. This is an ascending team. The defense is playing way better, punching above their weight right now. Some of that is very weak offenses they've gone against. Bo Nix helps, Gardner Minshew helps, those help. But when they played the Chiefs, they made it a slog. And that's why I think this is going to be their formula. I think you even said that you had a Chargers take, I think, this summer.
Yeah.
Going like, hey, I think this is gonna be good. Like, I think this is gonna be okay. I don't want to I'm paraphrasing it a little bit.
Yeah, I said
you were
that
pretty optimistic about it.
I was pretty optimistic about the offense, and definitely like results wise, it hasn't been there. But this is yet another team like the Cardinals that it's process. It's a new regime, and I do think we've seen some signals of kind of what I was saying, which is that the run game was definitely going to be good. I also wish I had more kind of, I don't know, just, man, it's so tough, Nate, because part of my process of growing up is just becoming more cynical about player health, and like it sounds so mean, but just
once hurt, always hurt.
Yeah, once hurt, always hurt, baby. And I mean more for me, not them. Like I don't want. If I have been burned by injuries before, it's it's probably going to happen again. Or like injuries can really derail performance and things like that. I mean, you see that so much within a season, much less over the course of a guy's career. That I just thought that Dobbins was a player who, and shoot, like we're in week 7. He might get hurt at some point. I would say if you like stacked up odds of players to get hurt, he's got to be up there, which we'll put a pin in that for just a second. But I wish I had more imagination of Dobbins being that guy instead of just like Gus Edwards. So put that aside for a second. I did feel pretty good about the run game. The pass game I do think is coming along. Like I see what they're trying to do. Ladd McConkey didn't have that big game coming out of his bye week, but you got to remember he was evaluated for concussion. He came off the field with another injury at one point that he was kind of dealing with. I think his time will come. He's a very good addition, I think, on this team. The problem is just like the rest of the dudes just aren't it, And I think we've gotten to a point with Quentin Johnston where he is like a playable NFL player because he was not that last year. But let's not get too far over our skis about what Quentin Johnston is. He is still a very limited player in what you can do with him. I think they're using him the right ways. That's encouraging. The problem is, okay, Ladd McConkey, good. Quentin Johnston, now useful. I kind of think that's it. Like I've never been the biggest Josh Palmer fan in the world.
No, he's a dirty work guy.
Yeah, he's not. But he's a dirty work guy. But I just think as a receiver, he doesn't bring much to the table for me.
But that's what I mean. He's like a 4. Like
exactly.
Like a good roster. Like he's a 4 that is Noah Brown, or something like that.
That's not bad. Yeah, like a Noah Brown type of player. I think that makes total sense to me. There's just not a lot of players here. So I guess before we get back to the run game, just thinking about the passing game for a second here too. Do we think that that's something that over the course of the year, like what can they do to accentuate the very few players that they have, because they do have a great quarterback here who I think has played a lot under duress so far this season as well.
And Herbert's playing phenomenal. Watching that Broncos game was he was excellent. It was mitigating so many negative plays, and some of the throws were, it's just like, oh yeah, this is why he's an elite guy. I don't care what anyone says. Like he's elite as elite can get. Like brain, arm talent, creation. He's awesome. They're also going to get some phenomenal mouthwash this next week against the Cardinals defense. But the the passing game, this is why I do struggle with it. Greg Roman has never been known for his drop back stuff. Harbaugh's never been known for his drop back stuff. That's just not how they play. It's going to be, I don't think there's going to be a high end thing here with him. You might get some touchdowns in the red zone as they now move the ball pretty well, running the ball. They now move the ball. They're getting some more chunks, to Ladd McConkey and stuff like that. But it's never going to be a yards guy. The yards are always going to be capped. Like if he breaks 220 or 240, they want that. Like they don't want that. They do not want him to be throwing for 300 something yards. And on fantasy terms, that's not great.
Well, they have the defense now, by the way, to do that too. That's something that I wasn't 100% sure on coming into the year. Like I thought they might get pushed into a few more game scripts, but their defense has been awesome this year. And, again, maybe not played the best offenses in the NFL, but at the same time, I think overall, I've been impressed by what I've seen defensively there, and that's going to keep them in these close game scripts.
That's exactly it. It's so that's if you're in neutral game scripts, they're going to run. Okay, if we're in third down, we'll pass and let our machine go back and do his thing. And then the occasional shot play, like you saw it, hit one to Vidal. Is it Vidal? Vidal.
Yeah.
Every fantasy guy's favorite. But that's kind of this offense. That was okay. But on that drive, it was run for a nice gain to J.K. Dobbins. Run to a nice game to J.K. Dobbins. Okay, we're going to run mesh, which was really designed, I think, to just get a crosser against man coverage, 5-7 yards. But Justin Herbert being Justin Herbert, he knows that Vidal was on the linebacker and hits it over the top. That's going to be only a couple times a game. They're not going to be pushing the ball that much. It's just going to have, it comes in the flow of the offense here. Like they're not very designer. They are designer, but they're not like the Lions who are any chance they get, it's design plays city to huge chunk plays to Laporta and stuff and Amon-Ra St. Brown. So it's going to be, I think Herbert's stuff and Herbert's fantasy stuff is not going to match what he's doing on tape, which is excellent football and excellent quarterbacking and all of that. It's just not going to always correlate because that's not what they want. And I think that's always going to be something with this offense until they add more weapons. And then they can go, we can lean on that more. They only carry 4 receivers on game day. Like they tell you what they're doing. And one of them is Simi Foco, who is just a glorified screener. You know, like
had a pretty sick catch against the Broncos.
He did. But it's going to be, he's kind of a Mac Hollins.
Oh yeah. I remember when he was like playing a bunch of snaps for the Cowboys week 1 against the Bucs a few years ago. And it was like CeeDee Lamb had a bunch of targets for no yards. I'm like, once we've got Semi Fihoko as like an outside receiver that we're counting on, we're in a little bit of a troubling territory. And I feel that way.
What does this feel like?
Yeah.
If he's playing out there, but Dobbins has juice. Ladd's a keeper, like obviously, and Herbert trusts him more and more. So like those are 2 guys I'm buying if I'm buying in this fantasy league. I already talked about Ladd a few weeks ago. So hopefully
he's still 57% rostered in Yahoo leagues. Like I think actually he could really that should be closer to 100%. And definitely I think at some point, like, you know, Chargers in week 7, the Saints defense in, you know, week 8, they're starting to fall apart a little bit there.
You can get after him.
I'll talk about the Saints in Thursday night preview actually. But yeah, I'm with you about Ladd. Last thing on the Chargers, you mentioned Kimani Vidal. He is like every best ball bro's favorite running back. Actually a real person, turns out, because he did score that touchdown. Yeah. Any thoughts on him and like how if knock on wood, anything ever happened to J.K. Dobbins, he definitely seems like one of those backs that probably like when it gets to stash season, he should be on benches.
It's just the frequency of this offense, how much they're going to run the ball. Like he's going to get the usage. So that's even I could care, you know, talent wise, I think he's fine. But if doesn't even matter where it is on the scale, it's almost like buying a Shanahan running back, you know, where it's just like, whoever's back there, you're safe that he's going to get the usage because this is what their formula is going to be. But if that does happen where Dobbins got hurt, I could see it, you know, trickling maybe a few more passes just to be like, all right, let Herbert and Ladd go to work. But Ladd is the guy. Like he's a real player. Like it's meaning like he's a guy that deserves these targets. I think they see him the same way. And I think Herbert loves him. Herbert's always looking for him, especially in man coverage situations, which is huge. Because that's the guy he knows is going to win. So I just think that's not going away. Like I actually thought that play at the goal line where he lowered his shoulder, I thought he got hurt there and he didn't. And I was like, hey, all right, cool. All right. So like, but good player. It's just, and again, Herbert is a better real football player than how fantasy is going to kind of relate to that. It's not going to be his first couple of years in the league where he was leading the league in pass attempts and all that. That's not what they want. It's never going to be how this offense attacks.
Yeah, Ladd McConkey's been targeted on 38% of his routes, 38.2% of his routes versus man coverage, according to True Media. That's 8th most in the NFL.
Yep.
Like in terms of non-small sample size dudes that he's up with, because there's obviously a couple like Troy Franklin and like Will Dissly, ironically, on the Chargers, but those guys have like 15 targets. I'm talking like 19 plus targets. Malik Neighbors, AJ Brown, Adonai Mitchell. Those targets aren't really working out. Justin Jefferson, Deontay Johnson, Ladd McConkey, Nico Collins. Like that's where he's at in terms of like targets against man coverage. So
deserved targets.
Yeah, when we get a couple of real deal like man coverage defenses, that might be something to look at as well. All right, last offense we're going to talk about here. And this one I think will actually be really useful for people in fantasy leagues because a lot of these guys have been mega disappointing. Miami Dolphins, 31st in offensive DVOA, 32nd in EPA per play. And before everybody just says, hey, buddy, Tua. You look at just the first 2 weeks of the season, and I get Tua missed part of this game, but they were not doing anything in the first part of week 2 before he got concussed. They were 26th in EPA per play in the first 2 weeks of the season. They were 21st in success rate. Like they were not a good offense in the first 2 weeks of the season, even with Tua back there. So obviously, Nate, I get it. If Tua's out there, this is a different conversation. But what's up with the Dolphins offense? Like I understand that like you're missing your franchise quarterback that you extended, but they can't do basically anything right now. And again, even with him, they were struggling a little bit to start the year. Very small sample size, but still.
I thought even with him out, the run game would still cook. Maybe take a few steps back because their teams are going to be more run focused and all that. But the run game sucks. Like the run game is like, you look at stats, you look
hideous.
At even just expectation stats, they're negative. Like first point of contact stats, like anything you look at, it's just not, it's turned into a boom bust run game as opposed to a hyper efficient and hyper explosive run game. I get it. Having your starting quarterback does help everything. It does. No matter where we rank Tua on the grand scale of quarterback rankings that everyone likes to do every week, he's still the starting quarterback that operates this offense really well. And you kind of took my main talking point. That before Tua got hurt in week 2, they were getting slaughtered by the Bills. Week 1, the Jags swamped them, like absolutely swamped them. They hit a couple big plays late, but success rate, just watching an eye test, they couldn't move the ball consistently. It was relying on explosive plays. This offense is great because they get those explosive plays, but also they can move the ball consistently. I thought they would add maybe a few more layers to this offense, maybe adjust for the quarterback, and they haven't. They're kind of a zombie team right now.
Yeah.
I have a Twitter follower named Zombie Fins. They feel like a zombie Fins. That's kind of like, that's how they feel. I like my first note on this, I said, they're just a team that's there for me. Like I watched them and I'm like, okay, maybe they're going to do some cool run stuff. And it's the same stuff.
It's brutal. It's one of my
off on it.
It went from one of my favorite teams to watch
weekly watch
all 22. Even if like we said when we did the top 10 offenses show, it's kind of boring to talk about them just because they do what they do. And maybe that should have been our hint. Like they do what they do and they do it because they have these really fast, exciting players. All of a sudden they're not doing anything like exciting to watch back on. There's not even I see what they're trying to do. They just don't have the quarterback to do it. It feels pretty brutal. And again, the underlying, just overall numbers here, like the bottom line fantasy numbers, Devon Achane is running back 25 in points per game. I'm using points per game because they've had their bye. Running back 25 in points per game. Tyreek Hill is wide receiver 37 in points per game. Jalen Waddle is wide receiver 59. Beyond useless, basically, is what Jalen Waddle has been in fantasy football this year. And the worst part about it is that I don't think Tyreek has really lost a step, at least when I watch him play. And Waddle, I thought he was coming off his best year as an individual player last season. Obviously, the results, the statistics, because of the injuries and things like that. But watching him in isolation as that perimeter receiver, because he does more of the hard stuff than Tyreek Hill does, I thought he was coming off a great year. And it's just nothing looks good so far this year.
None. And again, you can use the simple, Tua's been out. But again, there's not the easy buttons. There's nothing that's just feeding them. There's not, it just feels listless. It feels like everyone took a step back, even like you said, they haven't, maybe like Tyreek Hill hasn't, but it just feels like they're all just going out there and saying whatever. I don't know. I've been really, disappointed. We kind of, like you said, the top 10 offensive show work. Well, it's the safest bet. Like, even though they might take what do we want to say? And it's like, oh shoot, maybe those red alerts were redder than we realized. And that's how I feel about them. I know that's not fair to Dolphins fans that are like, hey, this fix is going to happen. They haven't shown any lines of change. There hasn't been any change that I'm like, I could pull out this thread. So, maybe if Tua comes back and they just go, okay, let's just play the hits. Well, it showed through 7 quarters that defenses knew all the tunes. Like they knew them all and they knew how to play them really well. It was just an individual mistake that led to the big play. So
that Jaguars defense that we just dumped on in the first half of the show, they were giving them a lot of problems in week 1.
Swamped them. So it's a team that, I don't know. Mike McDaniel does so much cool stuff. And it's just like this year, I feel like he shrugged. And I don't know. That's like my biggest takeaway with it. And I wish I had something here for you guys. But I just feel like, they're going to get a natural bump like Tyreek is and Jalen Waddle once Tua gets back. They won't be, where was Waddle, 57?
59.
59? Wow. Okay. But they're not going to be that. But I don't know if they're going to be to the numbers, again, that they reached last year or the last 2 years, I should say, when they're playing like the greatest show on turf at times. Like it's just something different. I was trying to come up with a nickname for him for a while. They just feel more like a mid-level Shanahan offense as opposed to something special. And who knows, maybe they have something after their bye or Tua comes back that they've been working on. You never know. I'm not in those meetings, but
they play the Colts in week 7. Play Colts in week 7, Cardinals in week 8. So I mean,
there's some mouthwash right there.
I just wish I had more faith in like a guy like Jalen Waddle. Because look, if you took Tyreek Hill, your fantasy season might not be going that well anyways. But like if you have him, like I actually do have him on a team that is good. Shout out to me. I'm just gonna probably have to play him. Like and just it is what it is, and hope that he rips along one. You know, Snoop Huntley gets him one accurate deep pass against the Colts. That's less of the like interesting question as opposed to like, okay, maybe we see Tua, and that's so hard. We don't have no idea when he's going to be back. But like maybe we see him coming back in week 10 against the Rams or 11 against the Raiders, you know, stuff like that. Is that enough to get these guys back to usable, or will they still be mildly disappointing based on where they were drafted? Like even Achane too, I'm concerned about that as well.
Yeah, and man, anyway, Achane too, like what's his thing? It's like, all right, he's going to be very explosive and everything. You're worried about his health. But it's like this was the time for him to take off when he was out there. Didn't feel that. Their rookie they drafted from Tennessee. He's a Jalen too, isn't he?
Jalen Wright. Yep.
Jalen Wright. I know it's all the Jalens. That's why I was like, wait, am I thinking of his name wrong? But Jalen Wright, they got going a little bit against the Seahawks, and then now it's kind of okay. Where's his touches? I don't know. I just have been, it's a big shrug of the shoulders. We'll see, you know, Snoop Huntley, like, again, when they had him at quarterback, they're running the same stuff. It wasn't like, okay, now we're going to use Snoop on this and change it all up. Yeah. They're just like, nope, keep it going. Play the same tunes.
I will say this, just to end on an optimistic note before we throw a break.
Okay, there we go.
Because we did get a good performance from the run game with Raheem Mostert back. Obviously, Achane got banged up in that game, but 19 carries for 80 yards from Mostert against the Patriots in week 5 before their bye. Actually, Jalen Wright had 13 carries for 86 yards. So like
did not watch that side of the ball, so I am sorry to Dolphins fans.
Jeez, how dare
Dolphins
you?
offense against Patriots defense was not getting me going. That's not waking me up on a Monday morning.
Brother, I get, I have in my Discord, I have a charting submission, like, which players should I be charting this week? And somebody's like, I don't really want to make you watch the Dolphins, but like, has Tyreek Hill lost a step? Is he like eligible to get charted? I'm like, I'm not doing that. Okay, sorry. No, so I don't blame you.
I like my schlock.
Yeah, right, but I don't like that. But okay, so if we get a good performance out of the run game against the Colts, who are a easy to run against team in week 7, then I'm going to start to feel better about, like, weirdly, I don't even care like Tyreek or Waddle or any of those guys do in the passing game in week 7. To me, it's about the run game. If we see a good run game in week 7, I'll actually start to feel okay about, like, maybe I can buy a Jalen Waddle before Tua gets back and everything like that.
I just need to see life.
I need to see proof of life. Guys. All right. My God, we're not going to get a lot of life in the third part of this show, but let's take a quick break before we preview Thursday Night Football right after this. All right, we're back. We have a Thursday Night Football program to preview here. We've got the Denver Broncos coming to New Orleans to take on the Saints. Before we talk some props and maybe some fantasy players, not that there's a lot of options in this game. It's going to be nice and tidy. We're going to make up some time on this preview here. Now there's a lot of fantasy players to talk about here. But before we do any of that stuff, I just got to ask you, Nate, is this more of the Sean Payton homecoming party or the Dennis Allen end of days party? Because man, obviously I think there's going to be a lot of attention paid to Sean Payton coming back to New Orleans for the first time. If I'm a Saints fan, I don't like Sean Payton. I'm just going to say that. I know he brought you Super Bowl. I get that. You got to be grateful. To me, it doesn't sit right that this guy basically just quit on you and like faked it as I'm retiring when everybody, and nobody, from the moment he retired on the Saints, everybody talked about where's he going to be coaching in 2024. And sure enough, he was coaching with the damn Denver Broncos. That would annoy me if I was a Saints fan. So I wouldn't be all like, oh, Sean Payton's homecoming, man, I feel nice, warm and fuzzy about that. No. Then on the other side of this, the Dennis Allen thing, it's starting to feel like the first 2 weeks of the season is so beyond like a past life. We might have like Spencer Rattler, Bub memes, and like the Saints preseason squad in the passing game because Olave is in the concussion protocol. Rashid Shaheed's dealing with a knee injury. it does feel like we could be getting pretty like close to midnight here on the Dennis Allen experience.
Yeah, with the Peyton stuff is funny because he is a Bill Parcells guy, and Parcells is the king of things are going south later. That's so long. But yeah, this game, like, and even like the highlight of this game going into it would be, oh, the Broncos defense is sick. Cool. Surtain's out. So that changes what they do because they run so much man coverage. Riley Moss is a good player, but it's a little different without Surtain and what all the stuff they want to do. I think this is like the Saints just kind of feel like that 2 week, I won't say mirage, like the offense was, but everything was going perfectly for them.
Yeah.
Then watching them against the Bucs, just even watching the Saints defense, who I still think is like, oh, they could do some cool stuff. They're missing tackles everywhere.
Oh, got smoked.
They're getting missing gaps. It's like, so what do you do? Aren't you supposed to be physical and like a good yeah. So what is the strength of your team right now? And then with the Broncos, it's like, they're going to pound the rock and everything, and their defense will be okay. But it's just the Saints just do feel like, all right, what does you say you do here, New Orleans Saints? That's how I kind of feel when I watch this team. All the props I like are like unders, even if unless it's like interception overs, like both teams, because if we want to just get into that is
sure. Go for it.
Okay. Well, both quarterbacks are rookies. I don't think that's anyone's surprising. Bo Nix and Spencer Rattler both struggle against the blitz. If you watch the second half of the Saints game against the Bucs, Todd Bowles goes, "Oh yeah, you're a rookie. Blitz time." And yeah, Rattler looked rattled back there. First half though, had some nice moments, I will say.
Yeah, he looked about as good as you can ask for a fifth round rookie.
He looked like he belonged. It wasn't too much for him as far as like when things were going okay, which is all right. Nick, sometimes when things were even going okay, it's looked a little rough. So like all the stuff I like is kind of like chaotic quarterback stuff. It's like,
you want to guess what the odds are on Spencer Rattler over like 0.5 interceptions? You want to guess what the odds are, unless you have it pulled up?
Is it like minus 150?
Well, it's only 130, Nate. Please, let's show some respect. Right. But yeah, BetMGM minus 130 for the. But
I do like that.
Yeah,
I do like that. I like both over interceptions. Yeah, Bo Nix is minus 145, so over a half interception, because both of these defenses are aggressive. They're blitz happy. Dennis Allen has some, he's a Greg Williams guy, has some of that Bowles in him where he's going to be blitz happy against rookie quarterbacks. Like he has a little bit of that in him. Bo Nix isn't any different. And I think both of these teams they're run first teams. So if you want to look at any of those metrics, but if you look at like stuff like over 5.5 rushing attempts for Bo Nix, because he's going to feel chaotic and scramble. Mm-hmm. Like I could see that being a possibility for this team, but I'm not, it's going to be a weird game. It's going to be a Thursday night classic. So hopefully everybody has, and I mean that like classic in the sense of a Colts Broncos from last year classic.
Yeah, you'll remember where you were type of game.
Where Al Michaels is going like, why did I take this? Why did I do this? That's where I feel this game is going to be look more like that. I could see it being like, like receiving overs for the running backs, like, because I could see a lot of screens because of the blitzes and everything, and try and make it easy on the quarterback. So like look for stuff like that. Look for the Saints. I'm trying to even look at their tight end props right now. Oh, none listed. But I was going to say, if you want to get frisky and find a tight end over for the Saints, because they do a lot of bootlegs and they do a lot of things that are going to be underneath to help out their quarterback. But again, that's a little dicey of which one you want to pick. But it's going to be a slop game. So the props, I think, are going to be the slop props. That's what I'm focusing on.
I like Javonte Williams over 17.5 receiving yards. He has 11 targets over the last 2 games. He's run around on about 50% of the dropbacks.
Like that.
This is still, the Saints are a rather man coverage heavy defense. You'd imagine, they're going to try to get him involved in the screen game here. So he's definitely like, and weirdly, by the way, I think Javonte might be the best fantasy, other than Alvin Kamara, might be the best fantasy play in this game. God, that's brutal. God, that's brutal. Javonte Williams is like the best fantasy play in this game. But yeah, that's one prop that stood out to me. I think if you really want to have like just stomach turning, few hours here, Troy Franklin's gotten some playing time with this team.
Yeah,
let's do it. He has 118. God, social team, do not clip this and put this on the internet. I'm not even a Troy Franklin guy. To be quite honest. I better not see this video pop up anywhere on any Yahoo airwaves. But
you said he should have been a first rounder, right?
Dude, hey. Go back and look at Dynasty
People
Twitter about some Troy Franklin stuff. Anyways, 18 and a half receiving yards, minus 120 there for the over on Troy Franklin, who, like I said, over the last 2 weeks, 118 air yards, second most on the team behind Cortland Sutton. So if you want to hate yourself, you could do that one because it's just you're going to be just praying for like one deep shot and then maybe Bo Nix hits it. So if you want to have if you like bet the two of them, you're gonna do the Javonte one because I feel pretty good about that 17 and a half. And then you're also going to parlay it with the Troy. This is not betting advice. You're going to parlay it with the Troy Franklin one because that one's going to be a weird, wild ride.
Do you have over longest completion listed there? I don't have it on my site right now, but that's one that if you want to feel frisky. Is because, like you said, it's going to be they're going to try and dial up a shot play. I could just see how this game goes.
31 and a half for both quarterbacks. Both are minus 120.
Okay. If you want to really roll a dice, that's one I could see because both teams attack the same way. They are going to play action and try and find a shot play in there. That's what the Broncos pray for. It's just like, get us near midfield once offense, and then Sean Payton's going to dial up some shot play. So that would be maybe one if you want to go overs, but yeah.
Sutton 19 and a half. And then again, Troy Franklin. Actually, maybe it's Troy Franklin over longest reception, 12 and a half yards at minus 115.
There it is.
Again, better not see anything about me talking about Troy Franklin on any video airwaves coming out of this because I do not want this on my resume.
They're going to dub you over like a Godzilla movie. To say, first round pick. I loved him. I had him over Brian Thomas Jr.
What a route runner.
I became Troy Franklin at first early last year as a prospect. I was like, oh wow, I really like this guy. He does some cool things. He's a better football player. He does some blocking that I like. And then as the season went along, people were like really hyping him. I was like, whoa. I'm saying
settle down, yeah.
Third rounder, he's skinny and like all this like catch point stuff. So I think he did already have a drop in the end zone as well.
He did.
So it's and he went kind of where I picture. I thought maybe early fourth, late third.
Yeah, he ended up going a little later. At least I heard because of character stuff. So it's like it actually ended up
the dreaded C word.
Yeah, it ended up balancing out where people thought he was like a first rounder, no shot. Yeah. He probably should have been like a third rounder. He actually ended up being a value in the fourth round. So I think once we've got to the Troy Franklin part of the program. And we've talked through some mess on this podcast, Nate Tice. Thank you for helping me shovel some crap on this show with some bad offenses. Maybe we gave people hope for the Cardinals. Maybe we gave people a reason to watch Thursday Night Football and lose some money along the way. I think we did our jobs here on this one, buddy. I appreciate you doing this with me.
Hey, even the guys that follow the elephant at the carnival, at the sorry. I'm just really laughing. Not the carnival, the circus. Even the guys that follow the elephant at the circus could say they're in show business. And that's how I feel right here. It's just like, yeah, we can talk about some schlock. That's the football analyst in me. This is it. I could talk about these too. It's a lot. I actually think it's more fun sometimes than just saying, wow, Josh Allen's good, huh? Mahomes, Lamar. Pretty good, huh? Yeah, this is a lot more fun. So thank you for allowing me to do it.
Well, God bless you, Nate Tice, for feeling that way. Professional sports football podcaster Nate Tice, the elephant, the guy behind the elephant at the circus.
The guy behind the elephant.
You're more valuable than that. But that is going to do it for today's show. Appreciate the hell out of you if you listen to this. Hey, if you listen to this entire podcast, thank you. Because my God, we did talk about some bad players and some bad teams. But hopefully we gave you some useful advice along the way. My last piece of advice before you go. Yahoo Fantasy Basketball is back for the 2024-2025 season. I mean, if you drafted too many Dolphins, if you drafted too many Jaguars, and your fantasy football season is not going to plan, create or join a private league with friends, or join a public league to show the world your fantasy basketball skills, because your football skills we need another year of work. You're a developmental fantasy football player. We're going to come back in 2025. You're going to be great. But for now, sign up, visit yahoo.com/fantasy basketball. To get that going over there. We're going to be back tomorrow on Friday. Andy Behrens and Tara Roberts join me as they always do to preview all of Sunday's Week 7 action. Until then, We're out.